coming, and I want to thank our guests for the part 2 of our employment series. The first one was work readiness skills to ensure post-secondary success. I said that right? And then this one is school and community resources that support work. So I always like to start, just like our typical kids. The future should be that we'd like them to be able to work and live independently. So same with our children with special needs. And as that is, and hopefully that is a goal, about how we can help that to happen in the future. So with that, I'm going to start with Holly Haney from Access VR. Please introduce yourself and talk about your title and where you're from. Thank you.
I'm Holly Haney. I'm a vocational rehabilitation counselor. Can you hear?
No. A little bit louder.
Okay. All right. I'll try to speak louder. My name is Holly Haney. I'm a vocational rehabilitation counselor. I work for Access VR, and we're located in White Plains. I've been with Access since 2007. And I'm here tonight to explain to you how our services can help students transition from high school to either work or training or job development services. I'm here to present that to you tonight. So what is Access VR? It's the Adult Career Continuing Education Services Department of Vocational Rehabilitation, and we're part of the New York State Department of Education. We are federally mandated and state operated. So if you were to go into different states within the country, you would find a program like ours throughout the country in different counties. Right now we're working with the schools to help the students transition from high school. We start as early as 11th grade. So there might be people wondering, oh, is it just for the students that are graduating high school? That's really not the case. We can start as early as receiving the application in 11th grade. Yes?
So the 11th grade, by 11th grade, you mean if they're 21 and then they're going to 21, so like my son's 17, so he thinks he's going into 11th grade, and he is going into 11th grade, but we haven't made the decision if he's going to stay to 21 or if he's going to stay to 19. So can you define that a little bit to me?
Well, it is even if they're age 17. They would require your consent on the application form until they reach a certain age. But we can work with them as early as age 17.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Any questions? So when is clarifying actually?
So it's 2 years before either their graduation, which is why we say 11th grade, or their exit from the high school system. So if you know that they're staying till the age of 21, then we really don't want to see the application until they're 19. If they're 18 and you're uncertain, then we're open to getting the application, because we're going to, say with you, as you're saying, that your child might graduate at the age of 20. But if you know that it's not till 21, you should really wait until they're 19. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So Access VR can help with various services. We can help with vocational counseling, work experience, career development, vocational training, and job placement services. Currently we have 2 offices. As I mentioned before, we have an office in White Plains, and we also have an office in Rockland County. We have about 20 counselors on staff to service the community. Many of the students are probably asking, why should they think about this now? What do these services mean for me? And it's really about helping them make choices for their career after school. Many of them start thinking about it maybe as early as 10th grade, 11th grade. They start working with a guidance counselor, and that's where we can come into it and help them try to make those choices towards a job eventually. We have a process that I want to go through with you. The first step of our process is the application. We provide a booklet with some forms in here that the student is to fill out. And there's about 4 forms, and then we get this back and we help them then register for services. What we recommend is that the student go through who is available at the school. So it can be the school counselor, it could be a school nurse, it could be a family member helping them, or it could just be themselves filling this application out. Again, if they're not, is it 18 years old? Then they need your consent from here. The next step in the process is eligibility. So in order for someone to be eligible for the services, they have to have a permanent disability, which affects their ability to work or maintain a job. We serve various populations, so we help people who have learning disabilities, we help people who have physical disabilities, it could be substance abuse, it could be an emotional disability, so there are a wide variety of people that we help. Now, we want to point out that the information that comes into us is kept confidential. The student would work one-on-one with a vocational counselor, and none of the information is released to any prospective employer unless the student gives us permission to. The next step in the process is the planning and goal setting. So at that step, what we do with the student is they might have questions in their mind like, what skills do I have that I could possibly use towards a career? What am I good at doing? Where do I go to actually use those skills and obtain a job? And during that phase, the vocational counselor works very closely with the student and may collect other information to help develop a work goal. Some of the services that we use are work readiness, job shadowing, work experience development, work tryout, and an internship. We also have vocational training. So there are trade schools that we utilize in the area. There's also community colleges that are part of our vendor list. We also help with funding towards college, and that would be based on financial need. Other services for training, such as we provide up to $10,000 in job training funding, that's not based on financial need. We also help with tuition, school fees, books, tutoring, note takers, and travel costs if the student meets financial need. Once the student actually gets into a training program or they go to college and they want to find a job, we help with job placement services. So we can link them up with an agency or a job developer who will help them find a job. And they can help them with resume development, interview skills, job seeking, hiring incentives, and supported employment. Supported employment is a more intensive employment service where the person might require a job coach to be on site with them at the job to help them get familiar with the tasks, get acclimated to the job, and that's something that we could provide. Hopefully at the end of all of the services, we can help someone find a job. That's really the mission of what we do, is help people find jobs. If for any reason someone wasn't happy with the services that we provide, we do have a process in place where the person could then either speak with their counselor about their services, speak with the supervisor, or we do have an agency up in Albany called Disability Advocates, where that person can utilize that agency to help them resolve any issues they may have. Does anyone have any questions at this point?
I actually have a couple.
Sure.
One is, if a student is 18 and has, for whatever reason, dropped out of school, are they still eligible for services through Access VR? Do they need to have graduated graduated or exited school at 20?
No.
So they could access if they have a disability, but they dropped out of school?
Yes.
And the second thing is there any type of criteria or prerequisite skill set that a student needs to be able to access the job coaching or any of the support? Do they need to have worked a certain amount of months, years, hours in a week? Is there any kind of prerequisite skill set that a student needs to be able to access?
You know, when a student comes to us, we try to determine what level of work readiness they have for a competitive job. And when I mean competitive job, that's a paid job. So we may help determine that by having them go for what's called a work readiness assessment or a community-based workplace assessment, where we can help them determine if they have the soft skills really for the work environment. We might determine that they have most of the skills and may just need some help on some of the skills. The vocational counselor, along with the student, will really determine whether or not they're ready for a paid job. And that's given all the information that we collect during that assessment phase.
And if they're not ready for a paid job, is there support that they can receive through Access VR to prepare them to be ready?
We then would actually refer them for what's called a pre-vocational program in the area. So we would provide them with those resources.
Okay, and is there funding for that through
Not
Access
through
VR?
Access VR. One place, though, that they could go to is the Department of Labor, which provides services such as resume writing, interviewing skills, so they could utilize them if need be.
Could you speak up? Where is that?
At the Department of Labor in White Plains.
So
I
it's
think
more the
that-
soft skills that they
I think-
require?
Our expectations for students are not as high as they are for adults, so there are lots of programs that we can get involved in, which I'm going to talk about a little bit. Experiences that we can give them to get them ready for work. So Holly was talking about somebody who is functioning at a level where we don't expect them to be able to be alone in the workplace for any length of time. Whereas if we see that we can provide somebody with job coaching and then they can be left alone in the workplace, we'll work with them.
I remember someone telling me at some point, there's some incentives through Access VR for employers to hire people, is that correct?
I'm going to talk about that.
Okay.
Maybe I should just...
move on.
Who determines when the child finishes at the high school level? Whether they finish at 18, 19, 20, 21? Who's making that decision?
A student is eligible to receive their education until such time as they receive a high school diploma or until they age out. So if a student can receive their high school diploma when they're 18, 19, 20, so it can be a 4-year, 5-year, 6-year, okay? If a student is not on track for a high school diploma, if they're on track for a skills credential, they typically will stay with us until the year in which they turn 21. But if a
And you
student
know
has
that
to-
at about what point in their career?
We will know if a student is working toward a high school diploma versus a skills credential fairly early on, and it's really based on their overall functioning level, their overall IQ, their skill set. Skills credentials for students with significant disabilities that need an alternate type of instruction and an alternate type of assessment. So there are students with more significant disabilities. The rest of our students are working toward a high school diploma. And if they don't achieve it in 4 years, they can continue until they achieve it.
Okay, all right. So I just want to give you a little...
Say your title, introduce yourself. Where are you from?
I'm from Access VR. I am going to give you a little information about me before I start speaking. Thank you very much. My name is Gwen Canfield. I've been a vocational rehabilitation counselor, like Holly, unfortunately a lot longer than Holly has. Most recently, though, I was the business liaison for our office for 9 years, where I worked with businesses and helped in workforce development. So I will talk a little bit about employer incentives. And my present title is Senior Counselor for Transition and Youth statewide, but I cover Westchester and Rockland County. So my particular interest is definitely in youth. Just to answer one of the questions that was asked before, Access VR is an adult service provider. So actually our services go as old as a person with a disability wants to work. And there is one person in the office who recently told me that she had an 88-year-old person come in with a disability who wanted to work. My oldest person who ever came in was 68 years old. I kind of hope when I'm 68 that I'm retired. But if you have a disability and you're eligible for our services, then you can come in at the age of 68. We're going to talk about youth though. And another thing that I do want to mention about youth is sometimes they are uncertain about when they want to leave school, and sometimes our hope is that they could get as much schooling as they could benefit from, but there are also social stigma sometimes, and so a 19-year-old, the parent might be thinking that they're going to stay until they're 21, and when they're 19 and 20, they might start to feel uncomfortable in the school, and they might make the decision to leave. So we all, I think, sitting at this table, realize that there's a little bit of a variance. Holly mentioned that every state in the United States does have a voc rehab program, and I just want to mention to you that when she mentioned that every state handles it differently, in some of the states they handle it by having it part of the Department of Labor. And in some of the states, it's part of the Department of Social Services. And in those states, it's very, very labor-driven. You come in, you get a job as fast as you can, we close your case, and you leave. In New York State, because we're part of the Department of Education, we really are career-driven, and we look at career ladders. So it's important for you to realize that if somebody is going to college, we could have a student who's going to college for a 4-year course of study. We can help them for 6 years of college because of their disability. We could end up keeping the case open for 7 years. I'm sure you've had people open that long. I have one student who I turned over to another counselor when I changed positions, but he's been open for 8 years now, and he's pursuing his law degree, and he's a quadriplegic. He graduated from the East Ramapo School District in Rockland County, and we helped him all the way through 4 years of college, where he had attendance services in all classrooms. We helped him through a year break while he applied to law school, and he's now in his final year of law school, and I imagine that we'll be keeping the case open a little longer, because until he's successfully employed, we're going to be working with him. The other thing that I want to remind you is that because we are an adult service agency, your child has to be made eligible for services. It's not automatic like with IDEA, where the school has to figure out where the problem is and then help work out the problem. When you're an adult, you have to apply for services, you have to fill out applications, sign your name if you're under 18, have your parents' name, have your social security number, and you have to get us the documentation about your disability. So when you think about that, if you apply while you're in school, then the school's going to help you get that documentation, and it makes it a little bit neater and a little bit easier. Sometimes parents are ready for that process and students aren't. And I always say, give a child 2 copies of your business card, 1 copy for them to use now, 1 copy for them to stick in their underwear drawer and pull out a year from now when they decide that they're a little bit lost and they really do want help. So I want you to just think about the fact that last year, Access VR across New York State placed 13,000 people. 5,000 of these people were considered youth. So we are very active with youth, and we are becoming even more active. I don't know how many of you have heard of a new law. It was passed a little over a year ago under President Obama. It's called the Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act, WIOA. Does that sound a little bit familiar to any of you? Well, that has loosened up a lot of funds. Unfortunately, funds in schools are always tightening. We actually have literally millions of dollars across the state that have to be spent on youth. And we always worked with people helping with supported employment, which Holly mentioned is the most intensive type of employment us helping with on-site job coaches for a very long time. Now 50% of our supported employment cases have to be youth. That wasn't the case in the past. And 15% of the money that our office spends has to be on pre-vocational services for youth. So we are really being put in a position where we have to show that we are taking care of the youth in your county. So keep that in mind.
Can you define youth? What age?
Youth is anybody who enters our services within the day before their 25th birthday. So if they come to us 24 years old, 364 days old, they are tracked throughout our system. Even if they stay in the system for 5 years, they're tracked as youth. We feel that we have a partnership with schools, and we certainly want to get either as many referrals from the schools as we can possibly get, and we know a lot of your kids are graduating, in a lot of the districts across the counties without finding out about us. Or if we don't get you as a referral now, we want you to at least know about us so that there isn't a problem later on when the child is mature enough to understand that they could benefit from our services. So I just want to mention a few disability statistics. In 2010, people with disabilities only accounted for 6% of the workforce in the United States. 6%. Now, the other statistic is that 1 in 5 people have a disability. So the thing is, it's really harder for people with disabilities to get jobs. We know that there's a lot of prejudice in the workplace, but once they get a job, they usually keep it because they've been much better prepared. They have all these people behind them supporting them. They have systems supporting them. And also because it was so much harder for them to get the job that they're going to be afraid to leave it as easily as people in the workplace tend to switch jobs now. The average young person who enters the workplace now leaves, by the time they're 35, they've had 7 jobs. I mean, that's hard for me to believe. I had a father who had 2 jobs his whole life. I've had, 3 main jobs in my adult life. Most people who are older didn't switch jobs as much. The workplace is different now. Young people, the way they get ahead is by switching jobs. So when I used to talk to employers, I used to ask them if they would have hired these people. And maybe you'll be familiar with some of these people. Jim Abbott. Jim Abbott was a Major League Baseball player who was born without a right hand. David Patterson, the former governor of New York, was legally blind and got through law school being legally blind. Stephen Hawkins, you're probably familiar with him. There was a movie about him recently. Famous physicist, has won all sorts of awards, and he's had ALS since 1963. He talks through a machine. Harriet Tubman, the slave and the abolitionist, she had epilepsy and narcolepsy, and yet she saved hundreds of people from slavery. And there are so many actors and actresses, not that that's what I think our children should be aspiring to be, but Carrie Fisher, bipolar disorder, Tom Cruise, dyslexia. The interesting thing is, as an employer, would you have hired these people or would you have been skeptical? And what we really say to employers is, the biggest barrier is not the disability. The biggest barrier is people's attitudes. So we really have to look at attitudes. That being said, there are wonderful incentives that New York State offers, that the federal government offers, and that Access VR by itself offers. So there's something called the Work Opportunity Tax Credit. And the Work Opportunity Tax Credit is a federal tax credit. Remember that in order for any of these opportunities to occur for an employer, the consumer, your young person, has to be willing to self-disclose. That's an important thing to realize. And there are times when it's good to self-disclose, and there are times when it isn't, and that also goes back to confidentiality that Holly spoke about. There are also, the same person might disclose to one employer and not to another employer, or might disclose before the interview, or maybe not until they're hired. So there's a lot of discussion that goes on with the counselor to help a person decide whether they should self-disclose and when is a good time. The Work Opportunity Tax Credit offers thousands of dollars in the first year of employment for the employer who hires somebody with a disability. It also is good for people on public assistance, receiving food stamps, for veterans. It's good for a large part of the population that's had trouble getting employment. The WETC, similar letters, a little bit different, is from New York State, and it's for the second year of employment, and it can offer up to $2,500 in tax relief. Access VR also offers an assortment of monies to employers. In order, excuse me for 1 minute. In order for the employer to get those monies, the employer does have to put the consumer on the payroll. And the monies that the employer gets are reimbursements of their salary. So one of the types of monies is on-the-job training. And on-the-job training is really for somebody who needs special training on the job that they can't learn off of the job. So it's a little bit different than a job coach because it means somebody in that person's business who already works there is doing the training. The person can have a job coach at the same time, so we're going to get into that. Another program that we have is called Work Tryout. A Work Tryout can give up to 480 hours of salary reimbursement. So that's like 3 full months at 40 hours a week back to the employer. And at the same time that the employer is being reimbursed for that 3-month period, the same employer can be applying for the work opportunity tax credit. And it's not double dipping because they are paying a salary and one is reimbursement and the other is a tax credit. So I did put a booklet in the back called Hiring Good People is Good Business. We use it when we go out to businesses. So if any of you are business people and want to hire our consumers, I want you to think about that also. But as parents, I want you to think about the value of self-disclosing and also being prepared properly to self-disclose. Work tryouts can be used as a tryout, like an evaluative tool. But it could also be used as an understanding with the employer that we realize they're going the extra mile. We realize that they're working a little bit harder to give this person a chance. And so the way we're thanking them or recognizing the extra effort that they have to put through is by giving them the return on the salary. A job coach would be somebody we work with agencies. The people in Access VR do guidance and counseling. When we send somebody out for testing or for work tryouts, we're working with agencies that do job development for us. So a job coach would come from the agency that you as a parent, your child as our consumer, and your counselor work together on figuring which would be the best agency for you. It might be an agency that specializes in your child's disability. It might be the agency that's very close to your home. It might be the agency that you're already using for recreational services. So there are lots of reasons why you pick an agency, and we're going to look at that together to help guide you to the best agency and for everybody to be comfortable with it. But a job coach can start off a lot of hours with the person, and as the person develops natural supports on the job coach is going to wean themselves off until they're really not needed anymore. If a person is in supported employment with us, then when we close the case, because they have been employed with stability for 90 days, this case will stay open with the agency that we've hooked them up with. So if we've hooked them up with Westchester ARC, or Careers for People with Disabilities, or Search for Change, or there are so many other agencies, and I hate leaving them out, but you know what I'm talking about. They get extended funding through OPWDD, or does that ring a bell for some of you? So there are times when we want to make sure that you've made yourself eligible for every support in the community that your child would be eligible for. If they would be eligible for OPWDD, we want you to be applying for that as well. If they would be eligible for OMH, the Office of Mental Health, we need you to apply for that as well. So keep that in the back of your mind. And when somebody needs a job coach all the time for a very prolonged period, that person is more than likely appropriate for OPWDD's supported employment, which is much more intensive than ours. It doesn't mean that a few years down the road, they wouldn't be appropriate for us, because what we found out is people with disabilities, it takes them longer to develop, so they're maturing at a slower rate, and maybe when they're 25, after working in the community for a long period of time, they are really ready for our services, and then OPWDD would suggest to them, you really should be applying for Access VR services now. When we said that we want your students to apply 2 years before graduation, it's because a lot of money has come down the pipe, as I said, and we can now do a lot more youth employment services. So I used to have to say to parents, we can't help your children with part-time jobs or summer jobs if we're helping them with school. And it was a sad thing for me to say, because I know that the way I learned about the world of work was working in high school, babysitting, working at camps, working in May's department store, doing all those things, and working during the summers. So that's how I learned about work. Nowadays, it's harder for young people to get jobs, even if they're not disabled. It's just harder for people to get jobs. So people with disabilities have an even harder time. So we have a whole bunch of money available when it's appropriate, and that would be something you'd be working with your counselor to decide if it's appropriate for your young person. But we could develop volunteer activities where we can have some level of coaching supports, unpaid internships, paid internships. We have money that we can give to agencies to set up these programs for your young people from 11th grade on. So think the summer between 11th and 12th grade. Think after school. We can't do it during school hours. We can do it during after school and vacation. A lot of young people with Asperger's or on the autistic spectrum, they do very well in the schoolwork when it's just isolated schoolwork. They have trouble when you have to combine the schoolwork with going to a school setting and managing the social skills that you need to be successful in that setting. And then they have trouble with the job. So we've had young people graduate from college and do, have B averages, GPAs 3.2, and then they can't get jobs on their own. We want to start setting these people up with internships and job experiences during college so that they understand more about the world of work and they gain some level of comfort and some way to manage the experience so that they're appreciated for what they can offer in the workplace. So the important thing really is to apply for services, have your child be made eligible if they would be made eligible, and then really work closely with the counselor, because just the way you have an IEP in school, we have something called an IPE, an Individualized Plan of Employment, and everything we do is individualized. So what might work for one person might not work for another person. And that's why you have to really work with your counselor all the time to let them know what's going on so that they can help guide your student on an individual level for the experiences that would help them grow. Thank you.
I'm Tracy Calverdi. I'm Director of Corporate Engagement for a company called ASTEP, which stands for Asperger Syndrome Training and Employment Partnership. We are a nonprofit that is employer-focused. And by that, I mean we work with the Fortune 500 as a boutique consulting firm, educating and advocating on behalf of part of the population of individuals with disabilities. Specifically, we work with the 35% of college age or recent college graduates, individuals who have Asperger's or autism diagnosis, who are going on to some form of professional employment. So just in terms of statistics, right now, with that, the population we see, these are individuals who are graduating from Rutgers or Oberlin or Skidmore or Fairleigh Dickinson or Mercyhurst, SUNY Purchase. These are schools that have Asperger support programs in place, some of which you may have heard about, some of which you may have not heard about. these individuals are graduating, but the unemployment rate for that population is somewhere between 75 and 85% right now. There are probably a number of reasons for that, both from a corporate perspective as well as from an individual perspective, which I'm happy to talk to. But primarily, we go into the companies and we provide assessment for the companies to see where they are in their diversity and inclusion practices and how ready they are to work with these specific individuals. And based on our assessment, we will then develop programs with the organization to make sure that we give them training if that's what they need, that we create maybe an onboarding program, a mentoring program, both for the individuals as well as for the managers of the individuals. And then we will work to recruit talent for the companies as well. And we are working currently with companies like PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Becton Dickinson, Cisco out in San Jose, LinkedIn. We actually just started working with Disney ABC. So you're starting to see a lot of companies recognize the importance of getting involved. And we talk about the benefits for the companies, and we don't actually list the tax credits and some of those incentives and whatnot. We talk about some of the issues for them around employee engagement. So they're measuring loyalty within their employee population. Because of the incidence rate for autism, you're seeing a very kind of vested interest from the employees in their companies becoming what we call autism friendly. And that's both in terms of hiring individuals on the spectrum because and I should qualify myself as I am both a parent and a professional. I'm a parent of a neurotypical child as well as a daughter who is graduating from really and has an Asperger's diagnosis. So the companies have lots of people working for them like me who want to see the companies stepping up to employing these individuals because we want to know that our children will have an opportunity, especially if they have the skills and the interests to work in a corporate setting, which, as Gwen mentioned, these individuals are not just showing up with a 3.3 average, they're showing up with a 3.97 average. So we talk to employers about the benefits. If you're an employer and you have a government contract and you wish to renew that government contract, you need to be showing that you are efforting in to achieve a 7% diverse population. So at least 7% of a corporation who has a government contract going forward, at least 7% of their organization has to be individuals with disabilities. Or at least they need to demonstrate that they are efforting in to achieve that result. So there's a lot more incentive that way for these companies to get involved now as well. In our education process, we're helping employers to understand that when you interview somebody specifically, again, because I focus on individuals with autism spectrum, who might present as a little differently than a typical candidate coming in. Our interview process in general is really, right now, still oriented to screen out individuals on the spectrum. Unintentionally, perhaps, but that's what happens. So we work with companies to have them understand how an individual on the spectrum will present. We do that in a number of different ways. We have training programs. We have a program called the Corporate Lecture Series where we take a group of young adults every week or every other week in New York City over the course of the fall and winter to a different company. So we'll go to PwC, we'll go to Ernst & Young, we'll go to LinkedIn, we'll go to Disney, we'll go to NBC. We'll spend 2 hours at each company, and the companies we're at their offices, and the employers will send representatives, managers, executives, HR and recruiting folks to these sessions, and the company will do a presentation about their corporate culture. Then they'll talk about their recruiting process and maybe a best practice. Disney did the art of storytelling, which is their thing. which basically was how to create a 30-second elevator pitch. And then we do a social event. I say it's a cocktail party without the alcohol. And we let the young adults practice their social and networking skills with these executives and managers. For the companies, we basically demystify what Asperger's and autism looks like. So as time has gone on and we've done more and more of these events, the companies are, they meet these kids, and I shouldn't say kids, they meet these individuals, and they are, really impressed. And they might say, okay, this person's a little quirky, or they don't make eye contact, or this person is laser focused on this area. But they now are seeing as a result of some of these programs that are going on across the United States, and you've probably heard about SAP and what they're doing, that they're seeing an increase in productivity, an increase in innovation, and a decrease in turnover when they bring these employees on board. And I think, I'm trying to think, there was one, I recently read a study where they actually show the benefit across the organization. So when we do our training, we talk about some of the challenges that individuals on the autism spectrum will have relative to social interactions or executive function. We'll talk about someone being really literal-minded, maybe some of the inflexibility that you'll see in the population, because of the programs that we developed, we've actually anecdotally had some great examples. I give you one at Cisco, where the VP of government sales came in and said, I want this to be a highly interactive session. Feel free to interrupt me at any time. So obviously that's not quite what he meant. And one of the individuals, actually, the young man that you know, interrupted. And Pat was maybe 30 seconds into his presentation, and you can see he kind of stepped back and went like, whoa, you just interrupted me. And then realized, that's what I told you to do. Here's an example of being really literal. But in a work environment where a company hasn't gone through this type of training and awareness and sensitivity, that could get you written up. That can ultimately lead to a termination. So it's that raising that education and awareness in the organization, so it's really not a lot around accommodations and more around management strategies and effective communication. And you don't realize until you start working with individuals how many metaphors and idiomatic expressions we use on a regular basis. So these are some of the things that we do with the companies to help them get prepared to be successful in recruiting these individuals. And the thing I wanted to mention was that in companies that are providing accommodations or do these management strategies, they actually are finding benefits across the organization. So individuals who are not requiring these accommodations are report positive feelings about the experience, seeing that their company is making this accommodation, and around effective communication. Obviously what happens is as you become more effective in your communication to your employee who has disabilities such as Asperger's, you are more effective in your communication across the organization. And we've seen that happen as well. I guess the only two other things that I'd want to focus on, and then I'm happy to open up to questions or whatever I haven't covered that Lucille wants me to cover. The sooner as a parent you start working with your son or daughter and making them work ready, the better. We are starting a boot camp program. We just started it today in Manhattan with 12 young adults, all the way up to age 31, 32, I think is the oldest individual. And the things that we assume that our children know and pick up, and this may be across all disabilities, but certainly with Asperger's and autism, where inferential thinking is not a strength. There's all these things that you think they know that they don't know about the work environment. We covered today the three types of candidates, the known candidate, the applicant candidate, and the created position candidate. We talked about human resources and what they do versus a decision maker in an organization. We talked about the fact, and this is really, really important, I think, across all disabilities, but certainly for individuals on the spectrum. We talked about the value of getting a no. The data shows that you have to make connections with 25 hiring managers before you'll get an offer. And to get to those 25 hiring managers or those decision makers requires 15 contacts per decision maker. So when we are meeting with these young adults, we're saying to them, you want to get the no. You want to be turned down. And because you need to be turned down on average 24 times before you're going to get the offer. So every no is great because you're one step closer. You need those no's. You need to have that amount of activity to generate the offer. Now, probably for graduates, it may be closer to 20 instead of 25. That's not what I'm telling them. I'm telling them 25 because I want them to effort in and generate that activity. So it's, literally I have a page that also says no, 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 and then yes. And that's the experience. And it changes their entire outlook. Instead of every no that they get being I'm not worthy, my self-esteem is going down, it's, all right, great, check that off. I get to put another check mark on my spreadsheet and move on to the next thing. So the other thing we focus on with them is networking, and this is kind of like where I wanted to go for you as parents. It's about shifts. In fact, somebody talked about this at a program, a sea of shifts: relationships, internships, and there's a third one, partnerships. 77% of jobs are found through networking. Only 11% are found through recruiters, and maybe another 11%, I forget what the other statistic is, but basically, it's not, you don't send an application and get hired. That rarely happens. So for our children as they're aging up, the experience of internships is invaluable, and leveraging their relationships with their peers, with their alumni, with their professors, with their parents and their parents' friends is hugely important to their success. I know more and more colleges are building on those skill sets. Those are really, they are truly the soft skills. We're working with colleges and universities across the United States now. I'm doing a program in Atlanta. I did one at SUNY Purchase. I've been working with UCLA. And now I'm told I'm going up to Utica. Hopefully not in the winter. But more and more schools are focusing on this as well to ensure that the population are really more ready in that regard as well. So I'll close with my biggest champions in companies are parents. I practice what I preach, which is it's all about networking. The way that I got into Disney is I worked in executive search before I started working for A-Step, and prior to that I was in technology. And I had tried to recruit somebody at a consulting firm. I always tell everybody what I do, and I was volunteering for the organization at the time. And I said, do you know anybody? And he's like, oh yeah, the SVP at Disney and blah, 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 blah has a child on the spectrum. Maybe you want to talk to him. And that's what I do. So that's, it's what I want our young adults to do. And I say that so, if any of you work for any companies and you'd like to see them get involved and engage with us or engage with any organization that's doing focused on employing individuals with disabilities, any disability, that's where it starts. It's all about networking. And if you have friends, I am constantly eager to start to talk to companies and raise the awareness. And I will tell you, just like it takes 25 and 24 no's to get a yes, it's the same thing in what I'm doing and what we're trying to do. It's getting easier and easier. I will tell you that the, good news, bad news is that the incidence rate goes up for autism. There are more people who are interested in seeing companies get involved, and I'd like to see every company, every Fortune 5,000, every Fortune 1,000 company out there have a little moniker from A-Step or from whoever that says we're an autism-friendly company. So, did I cover everything you want?
Hi, my name is Kathy.
Oh,
I'm terribly sorry. I didn't see
Are
your
you
hand.
doing, Ms. Hall, are you doing any work with any companies in Westchester?
The companies that we're, I should say, yes, I'm trying to think of anybody's headquartered here. Most of our work is within Manhattan, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. I'm actually now going out to San Antonio there, but I haven't had
I've got some contacts with Regeneron, IBM, Pepsico in this area, so I would love to share.
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk to you offline. It's interesting. One of those companies, I've had relationships with the senior levels, and I can't get in there. Some of these companies think that they already know how to do it, and they'll just want us to send resumes. We will not do that.
And what's the name of your company?
It's A-STEP, the Asperger Syndrome Training and Employment Partnership. And I have some cards, so I can give those to you. And there was another question.
Yeah, it was A-STEP?
Yep.
A-S-T-E-P. And also then you talked about the ships, and it was internships, relationships, and...
Partnerships.
There you go. That was good.
Yeah, we have two corporate sponsors, we call them partners, that we work with right now along the lines of PwC and the like, that sponsor what we're doing, and we want to see, we don't care who the companies partner with, we just want to see them partner with somebody to move this, shift this paradigm.
Hi, my name is Pat Rowan, and I'm sitting in this evening for Marjorie Mathis, who is president of an organization called, a not-for-profit called Yes She Can. And under the umbrella of Yes She Can is a retail store for gently used American Girl dolls. And it is in this setting that we take in young ladies on the autism spectrum and with other learning differences to develop job skills. These are typically young ladies who don't have any job experience whatsoever. And they tend to be somewhere in the age range of 18 up through their middle 20s. Marjorie, the inspiration for Marjorie starting this particular business had to do with her young daughter, who is now, I think, 19 years old, Isabel, who is also on the autism spectrum, and she anticipated that Isabel would have a very difficult time finding work. She's more of maybe a mid-spectrum, she's not Asperger's for sure, and has more behavioral and emotional regulation issues. So she started this business, and tends to be a trend. This lady next to me is going to talk about her business as well, that more and more parents are getting into starting their own businesses for their children, for the sake of their children, because there's so little opportunity, particularly for those individuals who are not as high functioning as the Asperger's. But at any rate, what do I want to say? So we have currently taken on about 7, I'm going to say 7, maybe even 8 young women, college young women from Manhattanville and from SUNY Purchase as trainees. These are our new trainees, and they're starting now. This month, actually, we're starting 2 at a time. We do a full assessment and a full intake on each and every individual, and they have whatever training they're doing is all individualized. I'm primarily a recruiter for Marjorie, so I haven't gotten involved yet on the job coaching and training in, but I will be as of this month. That's pretty much it. One of the things that Marjorie wanted me to convey to you tonight, and to school districts in general, is the issue of what to focus on before they get out of high school. This is very, very important. We're finding that a lot of these young people are really not prepared for the world of work, in the sense that if they're in a special ed kind of a setting, They're getting so much, individualized assistance from teachers, paras, teaching assistants, that kind of thing. And they get very little exposure to teamwork. And we're encouraging school districts right now to really think about involving these young students who are in special ed in team projects so that they understand the value of working together, of collaborating with one another. And there's tremendous benefits to teaching them those skills. Because we're finding even in the work environment, and we have college girls coming into our work environment, who don't have any, they right away want to go to the manager with an answer to their questions. They need to find a way to work with each other first, collaborate, problem solve, that kind of thing, to prepare them for the world of work. Does anybody have any questions?
Where's the store?
I'm sorry?
Where is the store?
The store is located on Martine Avenue, and we have gently used American Girl dolls and their accessories that is being sold there. Everything is donated from people from all over the country. And the young ladies restore the dolls to their original beauty. They do the doll hair, they clean the dolls, they repair the clothing, the accessories are repainted if they needed to be repainted. It's a beautiful, beautiful shop. It really is. And almost every girl that's ever walked in there has wanted to stay forever. They love it. It's just lovely. It really is. So I would encourage you all to come and visit. It's on Martine Avenue, right across from Pace University. So it's that end of Martine, not the retail end of
In White
Martine.
Plains, is that?
In White Plains.
And it's not in Manhattan, right?
No, it's on Martine Avenue in White Plains.
And it's called Yes You Can?
It's actually, Yes You Can is the name of the not-for-profit. The name of the retail store is Girl Again. And there's parking underneath the building. It's the Seasons building, which is a big condo building on the opposite corner, the same side of the street, but the opposite corner from Pizzeria Uno. Across from Pace, directly across from Pace.
It really is a beautiful store.
Did you visit us?
No, but Jackie Scott, who works for us, she went there. I have sons, well, they're old now, but she went there because she has nieces, and she was like,
She loves
ecstatic,
it. Yeah, it's just wonderful. We have workshops for little girls who have their own American Girl dolls. They come in, we have doll hair do's and don'ts is one of the workshops they have. And we actually have the young ladies, the trainees, working with the little girls on the doll hair and assisting them in these workshops. So that happens there. And they also we get a lot of soft skill training. I think one of you made reference to soft skills and the fact that many of these individuals are very, very, very accomplished, maybe academically, but when it comes to the soft skills, the social skills on the jobs, they're really, really deficient. So there's a lot of emphasis on emotion regulation on the job and soft skills. So we encourage you all to come and visit us. Thank you.
My name is Ann DeCara. I'm the parent of a 25-year-old daughter with autism, and I would say she's probably on the lower functioning end of the spectrum. And she was diagnosed at 18 months, so that's back when the incidence of autism was 1 in 10,000. I had to go to 3 doctors before any of them could even use the word autism. They had never seen it. And I've kind of been living that tip of the spear now for the last 23 years where there was nothing ever for my daughter or for her peers at the age. And so I bonded with a group of parents and we started the Devereux Millwood Learning Center right here in Millwood, and that is a school using applied behavior analysis for those on the spectrum. And then as our kids aged out of that, there was nothing to do. There was no adult program for, I call them kids, I'm going to say kids with autism. So then we then created an adult program for those 21 and older. It's a Without Walls program, they go around. So then we got them situated in this social day hab program, and our next goal was to find employment. And we ran into a host of issues because, as I said, we're addressing kids on the lower end of the spectrum. So, we have nonverbal kids, we have behaviors, we have all of this, and we found the obstacles to finding employment, I mean, you guys mentioned your obstacles, I mean, the doors, 25 no's was multiplied by 100. And so as parents, we found the best thing to do, if you build it, they will come. I'm from Iowa, so I got music, okay? And we found it was easier to get our kids employment if we started the business, because we could tailor our business to the skills of those kids. And we joined, our group then started, we were with the Foundation for Empowering Citizens with Autism. We started another organization called Extraordinary Ventures New York. And we are a satellite of what is growing to be a national network started in North Carolina called Extraordinary Ventures North Carolina. And this is an organization that started micro businesses is what they're called. And within their umbrella, they start various businesses and hire adults with developmental disabilities on the whole spectrum. And since their start, I think they're about 5 years now into their project. They have EVNY, that's us. They also have EV California, where they actually have a community base. They have a whole community that they've developed, and within that they have businesses that support that community of adults with autism living in the community. They have another site up there in Michigan, same thing. And they have a couple of related businesses that hire, again, they were parents of kids on the spectrum who couldn't find jobs. So it got too hard pounding the pavement. I give you guys props for going out pounding the pavement, because we couldn't get the doors to open for our kids. And so these parents started, there's a very large group down in Texas. They hire, I think, 50 individuals with Asperger's. It's computers, computer games, computer programming, all on the spectrum, mostly high functioning Asperger's, completely profitable. They all get salaries, and they're all here doing it. They love to work. They don't even really care about the paycheck. They just love to work. And they love to be with their peers, like you were saying. They love to be with their peers. So anyway, back to our organization. So we have started our first, the hardest thing is getting started, just like your organization, and she was an inspiration for us too. The hardest thing is just getting started. So we have started, we started November, our first micro business, which is the candle business. And our employees, and we do hire developmentally disabled, mostly on autism spectrum, but on the whole spectrum. So our guys in production, these candles are entirely made, with the exception of pouring the hot wax into the bottle, into the container, completely and totally made and packaged by individuals with autism. And those production guys are nonverbal, very task-oriented guys who, they get a task, the task is broken down, task analysis. We have people come in and they're shown what to do. And there are 30 canisters out there to fill. They sit there and they go step by step. They design the labels, they do it with the computer. We have a guy who can do that. And then they're packaged and ready for sale. Then we have some higher functioning, more social guys who love to sell. Love to sell candles. And we just had a sale at the Sawmill Club on Saturday, and we sold $500 worth of candles. And Brian is our main salesman. He's our highest selling salesman. And he can tell you what kind of scent it is. He knows how we've priced it so that it's easy to make change. Each candle's $10. They know how to make change. And this is our first business. We are in the organization planning stages to start our next two businesses, and we're looking for sites right now in the area of office solutions. The ARC has iDocs, which is a very large, high volume EDOC. We're looking to look at scanning, shredding, something more local rather than the larger customers that they do. And then also the other thing that we're starting is a laundry business. So we're looking for the right place where a drop-off, or we're also going to be going to the local colleges, to the sororities and fraternities, selling the laundry service to them. And we have guys who, now our guys can't drive, but they love to ride in the car. So they will go, they'll get their list of where they're going to go and pick up. They'll bring it back, and then, again, matching the skills and the strengths of the individual to the task is key. Everybody wants to get up and go to a job that they love. We all do. And so the key we find our success is matching the consumer with the right job, then they love it. And so on that spectrum, even with the laundry business, there's guys who love to ride in cars. We have kids who can't go out into a public setting. Their behavior is very, some days it's good and some days it's bad. So they would love to ride in the car, and they can do that. They can walk up to the doorstep and grab the laundry. They can do that. We have other kids, like I said, like Brian, who can actually, go out and sell. He's very charming. He sells a good candle. And so our matching of skills to jobs in the whole spectrum of creating a candle to picking up laundry, cleaning it, writing receipts, there's just a whole host of jobs that we do. So again, we had to come from a perspective that it was so hard for us to get employers to take our kids. And then once they would take the kids, we would find that they would love to do it for a volunteer position. And that's a lot of it is because I don't think they don't get our kids. They don't really know what they're buying into. And our experience has been those who have opened the door and employed them or let them come in and volunteer, love them. And like someone was mentioning on the board, they actually say that our employees are better than their employees because they don't talk on cell phones. They're meticulous about showing up on time. If they have a uniform, they don't want to take breaks. If there's a uniform, they must wear their uniform. And they say they're the more productive employee. My daughter folds pizza boxes at the pizzeria, and she can fold 50 boxes. They timed her in 18 minutes, and all she wants is a piece of pizza and a soda. That's what we pay. And they say his two guys do it, takes them an hour. And so anyway, we have just kind of just turned our perspective, and we found that we are able to place our kids who are a little bit more involved or a little quirkier, and we're able then to place them in our jobs, and that's kind of the angle that we've taken. And we have also, we do pay, we pay above minimum, and we are not for profit. So when we do in fact make a profit, that will be turned into hiring more people. It will just go right back into the business or creating another business. So, and I guess in terms of, as I said, I'm kind of riding that forward wave, and you guys are all behind me. And if I had someone to tell me back then what I know now, I would recommend to you all to stay, as allowed, as long in the school district as possible. Get your kids as many skills as you possibly can and experiences. Our kids start pre-vocational training at 14. That includes, how to go off to the restroom by yourself, how to sit there and stay focused and increasing, there's a whole list. There's skills, like you said, the soft skills, that you're sitting there worried about them doing a test. So much it's like, how do you go to the bathroom by yourself? How do you take the bus? How do you go get your lunch at lunch hour? How do you address coworkers? We go through greetings. There's so many skills to learn, and it's not so much actually doing the job. So try and take advantage as long as school system as you can to get as many skills and experiences as you can. Because I tell you, once you hit the adult world, it's like a black hole of services. The jobs that they want to put your kids in very often are, the job coach will take 4 kids out. So 1 kid will work and 3 will watch. Or, not many places will take, so it's very hard. So try and take advantage of it, try and get your kids as many experiences and skills, soft skills as well as hard skills, to be prepared. And I have found, and again, my experience is probably the best, the thing, I don't know how to phrase this right, the biggest deterrent to finding employment, at least for our kids, is their behavior. An employer will not take your kid if they're not reliable, or they can't wear their elephant shirt today, so they're kind of not happy about that. Or again, our kids are a little bit lower functioning, more regimented, where things like that would throw them off. But if they can't go to work and do what they're supposed to, it's hard for them to be placed. It's hard to them maintain their jobs. So that's one thing, is if you can train up the behavior in the workplace ahead of time. We pre-train in the site before they go out. So we make mock setups. So when my daughter first started folding pizza boxes, we set up an area that would look just like what she was going to do. And so you pre-train a lot of skills, or you pre-set up interviews when kids are higher functioning. We do mock interviews. So pre-training as much as you can off-site to give them that experience and confidence when they actually go on-site will minimize a lot of the behaviors or the things that are going to throw them off course. But anyway.
Sorry. I was just going to say, and I'm sure we all commend you. And I've got a guy for you.
Salesman or production?
Production. I'm just curious, I didn't see any of your brochures.
Oh, they're back there.
Are there, I was just curious if, like the other agencies have, applications.
Yes, we will be hiring. Yes, we will be hiring. We have a new director who's coming on board June 1st. And as I said, we're going to be rolling out our new businesses, as well as we've started taking, again, people are finding out we have our first specialty order. Wedding has asked us to make 100 wedding candles. So she came in and designed the package, and so we're ramping up for that, and we're starting inventory for the holiday season. These are our teacher gift candles here. So the PTAs are starting to order these. And we're getting some special orders. So yes, we will be using marketing. I know. So this is a teacher gift, yeah. And then there's a tag, so you can write to Mrs. Smith on there like that. And the spring, and this is a new product. This is our summer citronella. So yeah, you can grab a brochure.
Yeah. Are you selling tonight?
I should have brought some. I should have brought Brian. We'll be actually selling at the Sawmill Club on June 4th. So if you want to just go by and see it, or buy a candle, or talk to Brian. Yes.
Can you sell in more than one location at the same time?
Yeah, we're going to be ramping up to do so. Yes. Yes. We will have teams.
I just put up a poster for the Strawberry Festival in Chapel. I'm sure they'd love to have you come.
Oh, that's great. What's the date on that?
we
do have teams. We have these guys beg to work.
Well,
they beg
I'm sure they'd love to have you.
And so we've had to put them on a rotation.
You're exactly what they want.
Yeah, we have to put them on a rotation because they all want to work.
Bring some dolls too.
Yes,
yeah.
Good idea.
What does your brochure look like? I feel like not everything. You said
My
it was back
brochure,
there?
it's a blue one back there, Extraordinary Adventures. It's got a blue top.
Okay, so I'm Heidi McCarthy. I'm the Director of Special Education for the district, and I'm going to try to pull this all together. So I have a number of random notes. First and foremost, I want to say that if you look back on the history of special education and any of the huge movements that have pushed special education forward, put children in schools, taken children's special classes out of the basement and isolated them, but they're led by parents. And so we've heard this tonight. I'm an educator, I'm an administrator, and I'm also a mom. And I feel my most important role in life is being a mom, and I think I would try to stop a train
for my kids. So I can relate to how you all feel, and I commend you all for doing what you're doing for your children. And that has pushed so much of what we do forward. It's also become clear in having these conversations that this is really about all of us working together. It's about the community. It's about educating people. It's about coming together, pulling forces together to move things forward. So how do we do that? I was thrilled to be invited to speak on a panel. The town supervisor, a couple of weeks ago, had a panel, and Tracy was there as well, of different people from the community to speak about how do we make our community more accessible for people with disabilities. How do we educate our merchants about the benefits of hiring people with disabilities? How do we help people to become ready for that? And so the Chamber of Commerce is on board. I mean, it's going to take movement, but it's progression. It's progression. So I recognize that I'm speaking to kind of a diverse audience here too. So just as we have a diverse panel. So in thinking about what is the district doing and how are we best preparing all of our students for exiting school, whether they be going to college and can access support, whether they're in the work environment and access support, what type of support, what are their ability levels. First and foremost, if we think about what the progress in our society and in our job market and what jobs look like now as opposed to years ago, the district here and what we're doing with space is reflecting that too. So the project, one of you said project-based, working in teams, collaborating, not keeping our students so isolated with a one-on-one person that's helping them do everything, but really getting kids to coordinate more and work together more. Whether it be our students that are going off to college, whether it be our students that are going to be, working in the community, but really understanding how do you communicate with people? How do you work with people? How do you problem solve when one wants to do something and the other wants to do something else? How do you work together and make decisions? And so if you think about, and even think about the bond that's being proposed, think about the changes in our space and what we're doing in the district to open up our environment, to encourage that type of work to happen. I mean, that's just, one really important step. Your school counselors, your special educators, your CSE chairperson, all very important people to be working with as you're preparing for transition, starting at 14, 15 and going on, and it could go on to 21. As far as what are those decisions? Is a student going to college? Is a student graduating with a local diploma or Regents diploma? How long is the student going to stay in school? Working through all of that. The possibilities and opportunities for different options, and I'm opening a big topic by just mentioning it now. We have had evenings about it, but the CDOS credential, which is a credential that upon exiting, students have that they've prepared for and can show that they're prepared for entry-level work. When that first became available to the state, it was only for students with disabilities. Many of us advocated for that to be open for all students because we didn't want it to be an identifier. One of you had said about disclosure or not disclosure, walking with a CDOS credential only being available for students with disabilities. Many of us in my position felt is saying to an employer, I have a disability. And what was the benefit of that to some employers? So now it's available to all students. So to think about your students' track in high school, how they will be exiting, and what skill set they need depending on where they're going to be going. So all of those conversations start early and go forward. information about Access VR, information about OPWDD, and we've shared that at other evenings. It's quite a world to navigate. We had somebody here the other night talking about trust funds, and it's quite a world to navigate. Exposure over and over to learn it and to understand it. As many times as we have these opportunities for parents at night, attend them. Don't say, I've heard that one before, hear it again. So much information. Hook into people who have that information, who can help you with that information, who can help guide you. People in school who can help get you through the application process, whether it be Access VR or other agencies. As far as our vision for our students who may not be entering college, but maybe entering the workforce afterwards, the point about those soft skills is so important to us too. And so our process is very thoughtful in that we will not place a student into a community job opportunity until we feel that that student has the necessary skills to have a measure of success there. Because what we don't want to do is to have students' first opportunity, in a community with a merchant or whatever, not be successful at all. So those soft skills, understanding, how to communicate with people on the job, what to wear, what to say in an interview, looking at the phone, taking breaks, all of those really important skill sets that we all need, I think are really, really important. Something else that Lucille said as well, that it left me. But most importantly, in really looking at how can we support our students, but not give them more support than they need so that they're not overly dependent on adults. And Naomi Brickell, who's been here many times, and she's from WIHD in the Parent Center, has said, and I'm paraphrasing because I can't say it as well as her, but every service that you give your child may be robbing them of an opportunity to develop a skill. And so when we're looking at that balance, we really want to look at gradually moving away the level of support we provide students so that they can develop more independence, because there is not the level of support after school for a long period of time as there is in school. I tried to wrap it all up. I don't know how successful that was, but
We can open it up to questions.
I have a question. In relation to, obviously, Access VR, you say work with the school. My question is, if the child is out of district in the school, do you work with the designated district that the student is with, or because the district, they may not be attending at that moment? Any parents here, the
It
child is
depends on the individual situation. Sometimes, because we normally have every high school in Westchester County has an Access VR counselor assigned to it. So, but right now we're in transition. We just had 3 retirements, which is a scary thing to deal with. But, so there are some schools that aren't covered right now, but we do have to cover them in some ways. So there is a little bit of doing the best coverage we can, and if it makes sense for the counselor who's assigned to that school to see the person, we'll do it that way. But if it makes sense, since Holly is here and she's assigned to Chappaqua, and if you could get your child here, you'd probably be better off meeting with Holly, because she's stable. She's
and I'll
She is young,
I'll
yes.
just add on to that. Some of our students who are in programs out of district, if it's in another public school or if it's with OVOCs, some have personnel assigned to support the transition in a very strong way. Others don't so much. So we monitor that, and certainly if any student is in a program out of district, they're still our student and ultimately our responsibility. So you can always come to us for that, and then we can, contact the school placement, whatever, and make a determination how, which way will best support the student.
Oh, I understand because it's like we're kind of in our own district now. We're in transition in terms of the high school. So I know that we have an interim in planning, but that if there's a transition going on in the leadership of that. So that's why I was just asking that.
I had some questions. We asked people to send in some questions. One is Access VR versus OPWDD. Can you just explain how that demarcation is? Like if you're eligible for OPWDD, are you also access or one or the other?
So OPWDD stands for Office for People with Developmental Disabilities. It used to be called OMRDD. That might be more familiar to you. There are people who could be eligible for OPWDD and eligible to Access VR. There are people who could be eligible for OPWDD and not eligible to Access VR, and people who are eligible to Access VR and not OPWDD. So we have different eligibility requirements. There's a reason why if you can be eligible for both, you want to have your child made eligible for both, because there are different things that we could give you. And when you go to either of the agencies and you speak to a professional there, they're going to get a sense of who your child is and whether or not you should try to apply for the other. I mean, I can't be 100% right on who will get eligibility for OPWDD because I'm not in that agency, but I could look at the information that I've gotten about your child from the school or from your private records that you've shared, and I could give an idea. The other thing is that OPWDD has rather strict results of the psychological to make your child eligible, and sometimes it's helpful if you get a psychological an adaptive behavior scale. I'm sorry. An adaptive behavior scale measure that looks at their functionality rather than their academics. And that is something that if we feel that it's necessary, Access VR can pay for. So if you come to us and we're urging you to apply and you go, but my child's IQ score is 68 and they said that that's not going to work, and we find out that functionally your child unfortunately is not doing as well, then we could pay for that test. Did that help a little bit?
Yes. I also have a question about the levels of support. Like, what's a supported job?
So supported employment is really for the person who has the most difficulty in socially adjusting to the workplace. But obviously, because I talked about this a little bit before, they can eventually have a level of independence at the work site. If they really couldn't have independence, then they would be appropriate for OPWDD or for some sort of day habilitation or day treatment program. But if we feel the professionals working with your child that they can have a level of independence at the work site, then they would be more appropriate for our program. Say the question again.
It was just about it was basically what's the continuum.
Okay, yeah.
Supported.
So there was something else that I wanted to say about that. So most of the people who end up in supported employment are developmentally disabled. That would be the most frequent type of disability, what we used to call somebody who's mentally retarded, who really needs a lot of physical engagement with a job coach at the work site. But we also have people who have psychiatric disabilities who could benefit from supported employment. It might not even be as obvious at first because they might test high psychologically and we might really think that they could function on their own at the work site. And then we end up working with them for a while and we see the reason they're losing jobs is because of their emotional difficulties and the behavioral issues, or somebody with Asperger's who's functioning very high academically and they have the physical skills to do the job, but they don't have the behavioral and emotional skills. So they're going to need supported employment. Most of the time with supported employment, it is a person who has self-disclosed, because most of the time it's a job coach who visits them on the job. But we actually have some people in supported employment who have not self-disclosed. And those people talk to their job coach, they meet them for lunch, they talk to them after work. That has advantages, because if their disability is psychiatric, but they have a chronic emotional issue, but they've managed to hide that from the employer, but they need to have somebody to be able to review things with and talk to about work type of behaviors, then it could really work. Of course, in general, it's easier if the person's self-disclosed and the job coach does come to the workplace, because then they could also talk to the employer and you get a better, well-rounded articulation of what's going wrong when you talk to the employer and to the consumer. But sometimes that's just not a good idea, for the person to self-disclose. Somebody who has a drug history isn't going to generally want to self-disclose. So,
I have a question about Project Search. Could anybody address that? I'm not sure.
Well, Project Search is funded by Access.
Oh, is it? Okay.
VR, so-
I didn't know if it was through ARC or whatever. No. So can you describe Project Search? Because I think some people would be interested in hearing what that is.
Well, Project Search, there are a few of the programs in Westchester County. They go through a few of the school districts. I know New Rochelle has one. I know WIHD has run one. They're not running it this year. Project Search is a situation for students who have fulfilled whatever requirements they're going to have for high school. So if it's somebody who is diploma bound, they've taken all their academic courses. Oftentimes it's somebody who isn't diploma bound, and their last year of high school, they're accepted into Project Search, and they go on site to the location that Project Search is at. They spend their whole day at that location. All of the locations right now have been hospitals. There's an Asperger's Project Search at New York Presbyterian Hospital on Bloomingdale Road. And over the course of the year, the child starts off in the morning in a class that's run at the hospital, talking about work and the demands of work and what they're going to be doing that day and what the expectations are. Over the course of the year, they're in at least 3 different work sites at that business that they're co-located at. So if it's a hospital, which most of them have been, during a third of the year, maybe they're in the food service department. During a third of the year, maybe they're in the janitorial department, and the other third, maybe they're in the some sort of clerical department. Think of a hospital as a mini city, so it has almost every type of job that a person can end up having. During the day, they're at that job, and the supervisors on that job who supervise that site at the hospital are in fact supervising them. There's a job coach and a teacher's aide that floats around and assists specifically with certain kids on certain days or as particular needs arise. And at the end of the day, so the kids go to lunch with the people from that department or whatever relationships they've developed. They go on break, they have to follow the rules of that department. At the end of the day, they go back to the room that business has set aside as the classroom, and they're all together again with their teacher, their assistant teacher, their job coach, and they're talking about what went on that day. So by the end of the year, they've had a minimum of 3 sophisticated work experiences. They've been with regular workers in the workforce who are nurturing nonetheless, even though they're regular workers, because they've bought into the whole situation. The idea isn't necessarily for those young people to get jobs at that site. It has happened sometimes, and that's like a blessing in disguise. But the sites can't really absorb 8, 10, 12 kids a year to hire them, and some of the business sites also have unions, so it's a hard thing. But it's a great way for a young person to develop work skills and still be involved in the school. And, also be involved in the world of work. We also have some pilot projects going on in different school districts. We have it going on in Nyack High School right now, where we had 24 students recommended to us. I will say 24 students were recommended, and began a program that only 12 students are now continuing in. So the attrition rate is difficult, but it's spring of, I think it's junior and senior year. The kids have already been accepted into Access VR, so they've been made eligible. And we have an agency going in and doing work readiness training 2 days a week after school hours, because we can't use our money during school hours. The kids catch the late bus home, and they get 20 hours of work readiness. At the end of the program, we're working with an agency that is looking into internships for these students. So some of them will be unpaid internships, some of them will be paid internships. We're working, we've got one program going on in Westchester with Search for Change, and one going on with Juanio. Same type of a program where the students that were referred are involved in work readiness spring semester, and over the summer they're being referred for internships. So, but that's something that the only way we could do it is if we have your students eligible for services early in the year, because the program starts second semester.
Any other questions?
I just want to say that recently the town formed the Exceptional People Committee. I don't know if you know, I know with the presentation at the library about jobs. I think we've met 3 times. I'd say there's approximately 10 people on the committee, mostly parents. I'm on it. I actually work for ARC. I work at a place called the Children's School for Early Development. I'm really the birth to 5 person. So it's new, and I think people are trying to figure out what the need is in town. I think people are anxious to do something. I mean, you were at the last meeting, so it's there. I think people are trying to figure out, what's the need, and I'm sure there is a need. It's just a matter of identifying it. So, just to let you know, I mean, it's there. The website's there. Questions can be asked,
So I think the biggest thing with that is getting the merchants or whatever to buy into.
I'm sorry?
I think the biggest obstacle to that is getting the merchants to buy in. And we actually have an employment network also, and we find that we have somebody that goes into the various merchants, and they'll just sit there and have a cup of coffee or whatever that place does, and they'll look around, they'll just say, oh, I see somebody sweeping. Oh, I see somebody stocking shelves. They're making mental notes, and then they go in, ask to speak to the owner or the manager, and say, listen, I see you doing this, I see you doing that. And they say, we can do that. And we start out again also saying we'll volunteer to do it. And then we find that we can get employment started. But they rarely are willing to just give you a job like that. But, so we have somebody who goes in, and, because sometimes merchants, they don't know your kids, and they don't know what they're capable of. So you have somebody who goes in and can kind of case the joint. Okay, this looks good. We could do this for them, we could do that for them, and that's what we do.
Yeah.
Because they don't know what your kids can do.
The other thing you were mentioning about educating the businesses in the community, and you just mentioned that it's a community group. Access VR has an ADA educator certified by Cornell. Unfortunately, I will tell you that she just broke her shoulder in 3 places, so she might be out of commission for another month or so. It's been about a month since it happened, but she's willing to talk to chambers of commerce and educate the employers about the ADA in a very interesting way, of talking about the FCC rules, talking about people with disabilities who've excelled, so that they think differently about people with disabilities, talking about what diversity brings to a workforce, the end of loyalty, the creative ideas, et cetera, et cetera. So that's something that you might want to think about for your group and for the
So
chamber.
taking into account she hurt her shoulder, like who would I contact?
Michelle Green, and she's in the Rockland office, so the general number there is 845-426-5410.
Thanks.
And don't tell her that I gave her. No, you can. She's very excited about going out and doing it.
I have a question. When you're assisting all these kids and young adults looking for employment, does it make a difference to employers whether or not these individuals graduate with a skills credential or CDOS? Does it make a difference, or because a lot of your clients lacks the soft skills, or do they focus more
I
on
think,
those?
something that was said earlier, most people lose jobs. Even you and I, we lose jobs because of the soft skills, not because of not having the skill to do the job. So the soft skills are really important. We always say a person should get as much in terms of certificates or diplomas, as far as they're capable of going, we encourage them to go. Within the framework of realizing that you don't want to frustrate kids, you don't want to set them up for failure. So, sometimes I have parents who say, but everybody in my family has gone to college, my child has to go to college, and you see how the child's doing in high school, and you say to them, the kids are going to be working for the next 45 years of their life, until Social Security kicks in. Why don't we let them work and benefit from feeling successful? And maybe they'll go back to school, maybe they'll go back to community college. So you have to weigh everything, and we want them to do as much as they could do, but we want them to move forward with success, because success actually breeds success, which is also related to your 25 no's and preparing the kids for 25 no's, so that they don't look at it as failure, but they look at it as climbing up the staircase to a yes. So,
Also in response to your question, the students who have the CDOS are getting that household work experience, so they're out in the community, they're building their soft skills, and they have something to put on their resume when they start to apply for jobs. So employers are very interested in students that have the work experience. So it's good. It's general.
Lucille, I'd like to thank you for organizing this for everybody and bringing
Thank you all for this. This is such an important topic. There's so much to learn, and really for our community and our parents, and it all very much helps us all to learn together and to figure out what we're going to be doing with our children, in the next few years. So thanks all of you for coming. I really appreciate it.